Good evening, afternoon, and morning, depending on when you're watching this. So today on Real Kinksters, I want to talk about, or I want to continue to talk about communication. Uh, I was thinking about only doing one video for communication, but it is such a important subject that I want to capture that importance. So communication is extremely important in regards to clarifying your intentions, your expectations, check-ins, emotional and mental and physical awareness, or your status, being able to touch base with not only yourself. In the last video, we spoke about self communication. But when you're communicating with someone else, oftentimes you have these things running through your head. And you have to be able to shut that off to be able to listen to your submissive or your dominant. One of the most important skills for a dominant is the ability to listen. One of the most important skills for a submissive is the ability to express um, questions and concerns. And if there's not a speech, um, a speech protocol, but be able to do that in a healthy way, in a way that reinforces trust, builds respect, and clarifies consent. Consent is key in this lifestyle, and if you don't have clear communication and you assume that using the paddle is okay for impact play, um, you may run into a problem. So remember that questions are important. You, I mean, yeah, you have to be able to also express your feelings, even as a guy. I know that for men, we're not usually allowed to express our feelings and express what we're thinking. But when it comes to your partner or your bottom, your romantic bottom, not a play partner, but a submissive that you're in a long-term dynamic with, it is important that you be able to express your emotions and thoughts. And for me, in my dynamic, I find that it is also important, even though I know that's not really, um, old guard or whatever. But I, I don't know. It's just something that I um, never really stuck to. My training is that a submissive is not to speak, but I just don't agree with that. I don't think that's a healthy a healthy way to maintain a long term dynamic or relationship. But if you do have a speech protocol, as a submissive, you ask your dominant in the negotiations, is there a free period? Is there a time where I can speak? Because that's usually allowed. But you have to be able to communicate all of this in a healthy way. Um, and remember your communication is also honest. So you have to be able to um, take and approach your communication in an honest way. Um, Honesty and communication kind of go hand in hand. But so different techniques for listening is active listening, You can Google this, you can do whatnot. But basically, it means that you're not doing anything else other than listening and understanding what that person's saying. And if you don't understand something, say that. I mean, because if you don't, you're going to end up with a serious, serious problem. You're going to end up with miscommunications. Somebody could get hurt. You could get hurt. In America, you could go to jail or worse because you don't have proper communication with your bottom or your submissive. So it's really important that you take the time to actively listen and actively communicate, and then on the other side of that, there is um, being able to navigate difficult conversations that you or feel uncomfortable having, but they are very important to have. If you, as a dominant, don't want your submissive to go over to Robbie's house, or John's house, well, then you need to say that. But they also need to be able to, um, you know, tell you, why they think that's okay or why that's not okay. But that's my dynamic. That may not be your dynamic. Um, but it's important that you set those boundaries and that um, you learn to communicate during those difficult conversations. There are some submissives that, for whatever reason, they don't communicate with their dominant. They don't tell them, that they don't like a certain act or they don't like a certain behavior or whatnot. And if you have a speech protocol, I mean, okay, yeah, that's a real thing. But um, if you don't have a speech protocol, then you need to speak up. And but even then, you have to have clear lines of communication for consent. So if you're uncomfortable with something, speech protocol or not, ask a question. Questions from a submissive to a dominant should always be welcomed, always. And dominant shouldn't get upset when answering questions. Your role as a dominant is to guide and teach your submissive into being a better person. But let's go back to the first video where if you don't have good communication with yourself, then you might run into a problem. So, again, communication is just so, so important for play types, and it's important to communicate what you know and what you don't know and what you're learning and what you already know and your experience level. Um, it's also important to be able to communicate during a crisis, um, to be able to have, that system in place. Um, safe words, for example, you should have and remind your submissive at least 3 times before any play that of what the safe word is, and it should be clear. So again, communication is super, super important. Remember to actively listen. Remember to actively to do your best to shut your mind off. Don't be in a hurry to have a conversation. Take your time and listen. Kind of quiet that voice in your head and don't be in a rush and wait till the other person is done talking. Communication will change your life in so, so many ways if you follow it. So that's it. Stay kinky, stay safe, and see you on the next one.